update. As some people may or may not know, I had a '85 Fox body GT. It was pretty nice. It needed paint. It was really solid, and I got in a wild hair decided I wanted to build a 2.3 turbo engine, a la a mid '80s turbo coupe. So basically a Pinto engine. Kudos to the guys that do that. Some of these guys are 6, 7, 800 horsepower, but after a year of collecting parts and just realized it still is nowhere near having a 4 or 5. My goal was a 500 plus horsepower engine. Realized that it could be 500 horsepower, 2 or 10 or 20 pulls, but decided where I am right now, I wanted something dead reliable. And I know this may be offensive to some people, but I decided, you know what, let me sell this stuff. And for what I have already spent, basically on a head from Beauport Racing, I could buy an LS. My brother and I used to race an '83 Regal with a Buick 455 methanol injected aluminum heads, full tilt. And we used to have a sticker on the deck lid that said there's no replacement for displacement. That was even going to the Buick Nationals, seeing guys like Lawrence Conley with turbo V6s running in the 8s in the quarter mile. Well, let's say that 25 years later, my opinion has changed. I wanted to get the smallest LS, a 4.8, and turbocharge it and see if I could get this car into the 9s. We'll see how that turns out. But I got this 4.8. It's a Gen 4 out of a 2000. Well, the guy said it's 2018. I think the sticker on it. It's a 2017, so maybe it's end of the year model changeover. But a Gen 4, 4.8, 38,000 miles. The guy owned his own service business. I don't know if it's HVAC or electrician or something, but one of his techs totaled the van. Evidently, he's done a bunch of LS swaps himself, and he always buys his own wreck stuff, and just said he had too much going on. And I guess he had somebody else jerking him around about coming and getting it, so he listed it on Facebook again, marked it down from $950 to $550, and he's about 3.5 hours away from me. My brother's much closer. The engine was in Hot Springs, Arkansas. My brother's in Heber Springs, works in Little Rock, and I said, hey, could I have my brother come look at it and buy it? And he's like, sure, I'm tired of being jerked around. Show up with the money, it's yours. So I got this 38,000 mile Gen 4, 4.8, with all the accessories, wiring harness, unhacked, ECU, everything for $550. I bought a set of LS3 Camaro manifolds to flip around and make turbo system because they tuck up much tighter and have smaller 2-bolt exhaust flanges than the stock big triangular 3-bolt flanges, and we'll make a single turbo setup. May just go with the generic GT45 that you can get super cheap. That Richard Holdner's dynoed to 700-800 horsepower, or may spend a little bit more money on a turbo, because I'd hate for a cheap turbo to come apart and ingest into the engine. The only plans for the engine are to put a cam in it, probably a sloppy stage 2, obviously some springs. That'll do away with the VVT, so I'll have to get a non-VVT front cover. I'll be running EFI Source Gold Box, so Mega Squirt 3. I want to run it on E85. E85 is really hard to find in the Memphis area. According to the E85 government website, there's 2 stations in Mississippi that are 25 to 35 miles from here. There's another one on the other side of Jackson, Tennessee, which is 60 miles from here. So I guess it'll have a flex fuel sensor in it, so I can run it on pump gas, turn the boost down, and then when I'll take to the track or try to set records, run E85. So that's the plan with that. Just picked up a 4L80. I think this is a 2001 model. It's a rear lube, which is the main thing. As you may see, it's got a small block bell housing, still ALS bell housing, but I'm going to be putting a SFI bell housing on it. I'm trying to do this pretty cheap, probably at least for the near future. The car's not getting painted, it's going to be run as is. But I do like my feet, so I will splurge and put a SFI rated flex plate and bell housing on this. Like I said, I like my feet, I like to walk, I like to not have surgery on my legs if something were to come apart. Probably wouldn't, but probably and won't are two completely different sides of the spectrum. So we're going to go with won't. If anybody's not watched before, this Falcon has been converted with an AJE K member, which basically converts the front of this to a Fox body Mustang or SN95 Mustang. So I have strange adjustable coilovers for a Fox body. One thing about an early Falcon compared to a Mustang, which is what this kit's for, is shock towers are a little bit shorter. The fender aprons are a little bit higher than like a 65 Mustang. So if you put this in as is and are not using the AJE parts, or I think even if you are using AJE parts, the front will sit high. I could lower the coilovers down and get it to where it looked like it's going to be reasonable, but there was like no travel left in the strut. So my brother and I made basically a collar and a top plate out of 12 gauge steel, cut the top of the shock tower off, and extended it upward. It may have just been easier to get some 12 gauge metal and just make shock tower boxes. These literally could go pretty much from right here down like this because the strut is pointed away. There's not much room, but again, cheap and easier for me was the goal. So back to where we were a minute ago about the Fox body is I'd collected a bunch of Fox body parts. I've sold off a lot of them that I can't use, but I do have a Fox body manual brake kit. Strangely enough, that pattern for the brake master cylinder down there is the same. So there was a reinforcing plate somewhere around here, so I can edit this out. There's a reinforcing plate that goes on the firewall for the brake pedal mount, which is just laying down in there now. Popped that off last week and we'll weld up the holes in the firewall, and then I'm probably going to get some actually I have some more 12 gauge metal. I'm going to make a plate that will reinforce the entire area here. About the brake pedal, I'd modify the Fox body, so like a 1/2 inch or 3/8 thick billet. There's not billet, but piece of aluminum. Re-drill these top holes. Run it like that in a place to mount the master cylinder. Reinforce the firewall for the brake pedal. That'll take care of that. Another thing that I've done, plan on doing is actually it might even be here this coming week. 10-point S&W Race Cars roll cage through the dash. So it's going to come down here. We'll still have the cowl out, as you can see. I've been working on the cowl. Have the cowl out to get the dash bar in. Once I have the dash bar in, there's going to be a tube coming off of the dash bar attached to this plate. These bolts are super long. I got to get some shorter bolts, probably grade 8. I don't know if that's really necessary, but the sandwich plate is here. Sandwich plate on the outside. So there'll be a tube welded from here to this shock tower reinforcing bracket. I don't know how well you can see. Need light, but like I said, these lights make the camera flicker. So there'll be a bar from here to here, which will help reinforce the shock tower. And as you can see right now, when I do this, it moves a lot. But trust me, when this bracket that goes on right here to the cowl is on, this becomes super strong. And actually, I've got to remake those, which are right here, as you can see, it's pretty well used up by Mother Nature. This looks like it's probably 18 or 20 gauge. I'll probably make them out of 18 or 16 for just more strength. I'd like to take this car on drag week. I don't know. It would never be a daily driver. It's not going to have heat in it. If I ever decide to drive it more than I'm thinking of now, I'll get one of those universal, you know, for like a little hot rod T-bucket heater, a real small one. That's one reason I put these fresh air openings back in the cowl, just so if I change my mind and do want to put heat and air in it, I won't have to cut the top of the cowl back off, because on these early model Fords, I'm pretty sure most early model all makes, the cowls are welded on with no access inside of them for anything except rust. Rust gets in there and takes over. So today, I'm looking at is I've got these holes over here. This isn't going to be a restoration. As you can already see, I've already cut out a lot of stuff, welded a lot of stuff in, but I'm worried over here, this is just going to be cut and cut and cut to find good metal. So I may be offending roadkill, but I'll probably cut this area out and replace it with good sheet metal, because it's pretty eaten up. But this place right here, I may cut this out and patch this first hole in the inner layer, which is actually the top of the dash, I believe. Try to figure out which layer is which. But this outer layer, this is going to be really hard to patch in. It's not structural or anything. This is just the bottom of the window channel. So I'll probably cut out here and patch it in, then I'm probably going to go over the whole thing with some Eastwood lead-free body solder, just to fill it all in and smooth it out, so when the windshield gasket goes in, when it goes in, it'll probably have a healthy dose of silicone over here too, to make sure this doesn't leak. But try to solidify this area. This is about one of the worst areas left, other than that you can't really see on camera, but the top of the rocker box on the outside of the firewall is rusted through. We'll get some rust converter spray all down in there, neutralize that. But it's coming along. I'm excited to get the roll cage in, figure out how to mount it. I have subframe connectors. I want to make a rollover, tip over, whatever you'll call it, rig for the body. So basically, like in my, you can see in my 2-car garage, which I can only basically use half of, even though we don't really park inside. But if I start getting over on that side toward that toolbox, my wife starts getting nervous and upset that she can't walk through the garage with groceries, so I try to stay over here. Plus, I also like peace of mind. If I know that it's going to hail, I can put her car inside without much work. She has a little Equinox. It's easy to get in here. Guess my Ram will just get beat to shit if it's hailing, but get her car inside. So one thing I've got to do before I make the tip over rig is get the door off, deck lid off, maybe the back glass, may just leave it in the car, get the rear end out of the car, get it lighter,